I think it's time we got to the topic that you guys came here for. We know why you're here. You're here for EA. You're here for the Electronic Arts topic. Am I right? So chat, you know what? I know there are a lot of people covering this that we could use as a source here, but we're gonna use everyone's favorite Japanese singer. You wanna know who he is? Yeah, you wanna know who we're gonna be using as a source today?
We're breaking the law, breaking the world together, throwing out all tenderness, we're breaking the rules. No cause,
how do you like that,
no
chat?
choice, no going back to how it was. No slowing down because we'll keep our heads high. Our fist.
Sergey, hey, you came in just in time for Young, yeah. How you doing, Sergey? Good to see you, man. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
F you, Nightmare. I heard this shit on James's stream. Oh, yes. Yes, you're getting Young Yad. You're getting Young Yad. Oh, man. Yeah, good to see you, Sergey. How you doing, man? How are you recovering, by the way? And I know you've been through some stuff lately.
Welcome, valued customer!
We got the LGBTQ HD TV already. Quick question about probably being laid off by the Saudis. I love that song, The Spray Kef butchered it. Yeah. Yeah, I could probably sing that song better than he does. I mean, I wouldn't sound anything like Kiryu, but... You know, because... Ever since I was a boy, I've always had a high, squeaky voice. But, yeah, I could probably do a better job of singing that song than he does. Oh, Kyuki means crying, gotcha. Already crying about... Okay, gotcha. So, already crying about probably being laid off by the Saudis, yeah. Also, remember that this guy, at one point, was sponsored by Soylent. He's definitely using a vocal modifier. Well, so what I've heard is that they're auto-tuning him. I personally, I have no idea. I don't know what it sounds like when someone is auto-tuned versus not auto-tuned, so I wouldn't know. But yeah, he sounds terrible. And you know what the funny thing is? It shows, yeah. You know what the funny thing is? The Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, which right now I think is only on Switch, but it's coming out in a couple months for PC, has an English version of the same song, but they literally got a different voice actor to sing the song, and it sounds way better. Yeah, auto-tune. There's a few different kinds. Yeah. Yeah, I only know the what was that guy's name? T-Pain, I think. I only know of his auto-tune. I don't play the Yakuza games, but man, they took out the multiplayer. Yeah, well, I never bothered with multiplayer, so I've never played any of the mainline Yakuza games either. I've always meant to, but auto-tune automatically enhances the length and pitch, makes it sound like he's hitting exact notes. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Didn't seem like they did a great job of it, though. I can see why they got someone else to sing that song. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, it sounds so bad. Yeah, but the Yakuza 0 Director's Cut version does sound a lot better. But, yeah, so this is Young, yeah, talking about the EA buyout. And I figure, let's have a little fun with it. You know, because, why I kept the voices in Japanese. Yeah, that makes sense. I really wish that the series had a good English dub. You know, like the Judgment games, which are kind of a spin-off set in the same universe. They have a phenomenal English dub. But yeah, the Yakuza games just don't. All I gotta say is Allah Akbar. Nice. Listen to someone like Chevy Chase, who, even though he's a comedian, has a great natural singing voice, natural pitch. Yeah, I really only know him from his role on Community, actually. You don't want English VAs. Japanese are perfect word. I just wish the localizers did fuck things. Yeah. Well, like I said, that's why I like the Judgment games, because they actually do a good job of it. And personally, I like an English voice because it's just easier for me. You know, I just like having a nice English voice that I can understand easily. But community was peak, you know. You tried to tip, but it didn't go through? What? Oh, I'm sorry, Slush. Did it... You're saying that the, did you... I assume you used Stream Elements. Did the Stream Elements, like, take your money and not send the message through, or...? I grew up on Chevy with Christmas Vacation and other movies. Yeah, I know those. I think I saw Christmas Vacation, but I don't think I saw any of his other ones. Well, let me check here. Streamoutlets.com. Yeah, so I want to make sure it didn't, like, eat your money or something. I didn't get notified that I paid anything, so it must not have. Okay. Well, that's good. At least it's good that it didn't, like, take your money. But yeah, so, as you've no doubt heard by now, EA just got bought out by a consortium of 3 groups, I believe, including the Saudis, for some reason. And so I figured it'll be enjoyable to watch Young Yak cry about it, as opposed to watching all the other YouTubers going, you know, oh, this is so epic based, it's gonna end the wokeness and all that, which I'm not so optimistic, but it's more funny this way. Yeah, the worst people, exactly, the worst people. And it's like, I mean, they're not great people, but I can think of worse. All right. So let's get into the Soylent.
EA already had some of the worst management, but now some of the worst people have completely acquired Electronic Arts. Back in...
They don't let women drive cars, so they can't be that bad. Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good thing, right?
September 26, 2000.
The traffic is probably a lot safer. Yeah, I'm not convinced either it'll change a damn thing, especially like I said last night, who I saw was part of the purchase or whatever. Yeah, and I'll get into that too.
2025, there are already reports that EA was close to essentially completing a deal to sell the company and go private. EA currently is a public company. It is publicly traded. There are shareholders and whatnot who they have to appease to. By going private, they're no longer in, you know, the stock market and any of that stuff. They are kind of an entity that kind of operates.
Fun fact, it's not just Muslims, Jerry. There are also Jews involved.
As the title suggests, privately, but the people who have bought EA, the organizations who have acquired EA, are not ones that inspire confidence. That report was essentially confirmed by EA today on September 29th, 2025, with EA announcing that they have sold the company for $55 billion. And this is something that EA confirmed on their official website and their investors relations portal page. It reads right here, EA announces agreement to be acquired by PIF, Silver Lake, and Affinity Partners for $55 billion. PIF, for those who don't know, is a Saudi Arabian organization, and there's already plenty of dark implications there. Humanitarian issues, like human rights issues with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's that. Obviously, the Middle East has a lot of issues with human rights. I think Qatar does this. I think Saudi Arabia also does this. I believe they're known for taking people's passports and basically enslaving them. Which, you know, that is pretty bad. Just waiting on the Journo Cope, and we know the prince loves the Journos. Yeah.
Baby, and the way that those elements can potentially influence EA games and their output of products is disconcerting. And then there's Silver Lake, and then Affinity Partners is an organization run by Jared Kushner, who's also not a particularly savory figure and is all
You know, I actually agree with him. Jared Kushner should be kept as far away from the White House as possible.
All in this for the money. He's very much just a suit, and his leadership or the leadership of any of these organizations will ultimately offer no benefit to the actual art of making games and want to exploit the art of game making in order to make profit. But yeah, this is a deal where this consortium comprised of PIF, Silver Lake, and Affinity Partners will acquire 100% of EA, with PIF rolling over its existing 9.9% stake in the company. So
WWE has a long-standing agreement with the Saudis. They do at least 2 shows over there every year, like a 12 million per show deal or something. Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. Oh, by the way, Slosh, if you want to try using the Ko-Fi, that might work better. I don't know. But yeah, that makes sense. I've heard something about that. Yeah, you remember, like, and it's not just Saudi Arabia, and it's not just these, the WWE or EA. Like, I'm sure you guys remember that the NBA goes to China all the time. And, like, they're always apologizing to China.
PIF used to own only 10% of EA. Now with this acquisition, combined with Silver Lake and Affinity Partners, they'll own 100% of EA. And the difference between this and Activision Blizzard, which was acquired for $69 billion by Microsoft, is that Activision Blizzard still remains a publicly traded company. That will not be the case for Electronic Arts.
Yeah, back in 2019, a bunch of talent got stopped at the airport, and they wouldn't let them leave. Some Visa thing they claimed, but it was super fishy, Especially if you're like, if we're talking about like, big celebrities, right? Because they know who they are. Yeah, LeBron won't shut up about it. Yeah, LeBron loves China.
We love LeBron James. He's so good. Ting tong, ping tong, ping tong, ping. Down with Trump, up with Xi Jinping.
This is a deal that is expected to be completed in Q1 of fiscal year 2027, so somewhere between April 1st and June 30th of 2026. Now, a key detail about this acquisition is the way they're going about it. The consortium, the combination of PIF, Silver Lake, and Affinity Partners who are buying out EA, their equity investment is that of approximately $36 billion. So what about the rest, you may ask? Well, it is stated right here, $20 billion of debt financing fully and solely committed by JP Morgan Chase Bank.
So, first of all, if you don't remember, if you're not familiar with the what does PIF stand for? The Saudi PIF, Public Investment Fund. So if you don't remember, they actually have been involved in the video game space before. So the Public Investment Fund is the same organization that cucked the Embracer Group a couple of years ago. So let's see. Yeah, here. So all right, I'm not getting a good not getting any good links. But basically what happened was they were going to put a bunch of money into Embracer Group. So Embracer is the company that owns THQ Nordic. So they own stuff like Saints Row. They're the ones doing the new Deus Ex game, the new Deus Ex remaster. And then at the last minute, the Saudis cucked Embracer, so they took a bunch of money out, and then Embracer did a whole bunch of layoffs. So if you guys remember that, that's what happened there.
I feel so alive!
Spooky Slosh tipped $5. Tip for de awesome content always.
Hey, thanks, Slosh. I appreciate that, man. Slosh, Spooky Slosh just tipped $5. Deep fuzzy awesome content as always. Well, thank you, Slosh. I really appreciate that. Much appreciation for that. How do I not have a good... Sorry, I need like some kind of React. I need one of these React buttons for that. Jeez. Yeah, now I feel bad.
Oh my god!
There you go. It doesn't help that I can't actually hear what's going on. Yeah, for some reason all the audio is still going out to all the audio is still going out the wrong place. But yeah, thank you, Slosh. I really appreciate that. That's really kind of you to say. It turns out it was the Ko-Fi thing that was funky. Stream Elements works. Okay, that's weird. Huh. Weird. I'll have to check on Ko-Fi at some point, but yeah, that is weird. Yeah. Yeah, I love the French narrator sound that I picked for it. And yeah, so yeah, Sergey's saying, of course, JP Morgan. Yeah, so Chase Bank, basically. JP Morgan Chase. They don't only put their noses in the gaming market, but also screws around when it comes to people investing in stocks. I don't know, but I know people who do. Oh, Chase has so many problems. There are a million different problems, but they're actually not the core of the problem with EA here. Chase has a bunch of problems though. Like they've been dragging people back to the office, and their CEO, who, I mean, come on, you think the CEO of Chase Bank, you think that guy spends any time in the office when he's not cheating on his wife with his secretary or whatever? No, he's probably out playing golf. But that guy basically threw a tantrum a while back about how nobody was in the office. Yeah, he's awful. Probably just on your end, no biggie. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you making the effort, and, you know, putting that through. Yeah, so let's see. The other hang on here. Yeah, so the real problem is these private equity companies. So where I was going with this is the $20 billion of debt. Here's the thing that you need to keep in mind. This is a leveraged buyout. So what that means is, and this absolutely should not be legal. I don't know why it is, but for some reason, when private equity companies want to buy a company, they can take out loans, like this $20 billion loan here from JP Morgan Chase, and then they take the loans out against the company that they're going to buy. So that's what a leveraged buyout is. So in other words, all the debt that's involved in this deal, that debt is on EA. It is not on any of these private equity companies. So that's how EA is getting $20 billion in debt. So what typically happens is, most likely, these private equity firms, it's difficult to say whether or not they're going to, you know, quote unquote, fix the wokeness or anything like that. But what will most likely happen, for sure, is they will most likely strip EA for parts. So what IPs do EA even have at this point? I mean, I know they have like FIFA and, you know, a bunch of the sports games. But those are licensed. So, you know, they may sell the contracts or something somehow. But basically they will sell off all the various parts of EA, you know, their IPs, maybe their Frostbite engine or whatever. So they'll strip the company for parts, and then what's left of EA will be basically a shambling near corpse. And that leftover EA will be left to die. The Sims, maybe at this point. Yeah, The Sims is another one. They'll probably sell The Sims off. Sims and Battlefield. Yeah. So they'll sell off, most likely they'll just sell off these IPs. So they're not, in the long term, I don't think they're going to really fix the wokeness. They will more, like, you may see them get less woke in an attempt to make the IPs more attractive to buyers. Need for Speed. Hey, Neo, how's it going, man? Good to see ya.
The more the magicer.
Need for Speed, Skate, Battlefield, BioWare stuff. Yes, that'll be what? Mass Effect, Dragon Age, and The Sims. Yeah, so... Yeah, oh, I mean, they may sell dice, right? So Battlefield is dice. So yeah, so they may sell companies, or they may sell the IPs, however they want to do it. Yeah, and Jerry mentions, I hope they bring Command & Conquer back, because the Arabs tend to play the series still. Yeah, that could be another one that's another one that might just get sold off. So they'll sell these off, and then EA, what's left of it, will just be like a shambling corpse that's saddled with debt. And then what happens is EA itself will go bankrupt. So those debts will most likely not be paid back, ever. And when it goes bankrupt, the private equity companies here, so, you know, the Saudi Fund, Silver Lake, and Infinity Partners, they will all make off like bandits, having made a ton of money off selling off parts of EA. And then EA will just die. I do not believe that EA is really going to become all that much less woke. But everyone here is panicking because, you know, oh, Saudis, they don't like wokeness. But it's really hard to say. And it also says that, even here, you know, continue to be led by Andrew Wilson as CEO, so it doesn't seem like anything much is even going to change in the short term. And the most fun part of it all is that the way private equity companies work is that typically they end up selling this debt to pension funds and retirement funds. So there's a good chance that you, or, you know, your grandma, well, your grandpa, may end up holding the bag when EA goes under.
This is such a massive acquisition that the consortium, the group of conglomerates, couldn't ultimately cover all of the expenses. So now EA essentially is $20 billion in.
Yeah, what he doesn't understand is this is very normal. They, whether or not they can cover it is immaterial. A leveraged buyout is explicitly done for this purpose, so that these investors don't have to spend their own money, and they can just kind of get away with it.
In debt to JP Morgan Chase Bank. And then alongside all that, it was confirmed right here that Andrew Wilson will remain CEO. And while Andrew Wilson has
Dead Space, Titanfall, Crisis, Burnout. Oh, they own. I didn't know they owned Crisis. Medal of Honor, Army of Two. Oh man, I liked Army of Two. They really ruined that series, didn't they? Started off so good, and then 40th Day was okay, and then the last one they did was terrible. Yeah, I've been lurking as usual. Nice.
Has certainly, on a financial level, guided EA as a corporation to heights that please the shareholders and investors. When it comes to the impact, the negative impact he's had on the art of making games, that's an area where people are not happy that he's remaining the leader. But of course, the whole point of this venture isn't to make EA products better, isn't to make their games better. It's to pursue, you know, financial goals. It's to pursue corporate agendas. It's to make as much money as possible.
Well, he got that, at least the last part of that, he got that right. The point of this is for the investors to make as much money as possible here before EA dies. Well, the old Medal of Honor games, never played the modern ones. I don't think I've ever played any of them.
And so we're going to see a lot of aspects of this company now suffer from the quality of their products, I believe, to the employees and the way cost-cutting measures will come into play. Video game journalist Jason Schreier here put it best. He says right here, it's official, EA is going private. The leveraged buyout will be financed by a staggering $20 billion of debt, which likely means some aggressive cost-cutting is ahead of EA in the coming months and years. And
yep, that's usually how these leveraged buyouts go.
that'll come in the form of essentially
Also, Blue Sky.
Why don't you get some scented candles, nigga? Cause you gay!
mass layoffs, shutting down certain studios. I fear for BioWare at this point because companies like BioWare, studios like BioWare, do not align with the agenda of the likes of PIF, which stands for Public Investment Fund for those who don't.
So I think we're gonna get to laugh a little bit here, because you know, we can. Yeah, exactly. Blue sky. But you know, we can laugh a little bit at them belly aching over, oh, our woke crap is going away. Which, who knows if it's going away. Like I said, I think they're probably just going to sell the IPs. I don't think they're actually going to make the games less woke.
Those who don't know, Silver Lake and Jared Kushner's affinity partners, whose affiliation with, you know, the government, the fact that, you know, Donald Trump is president and he's his son-in-law, also creates potential conflicts of interest, so on and so forth. Like, none of this is ultimately good. But aside from the fact that EA is making a deal with multiple devils, including Saudi Arabia, well, that's been a huge focus of this whole fiasco. As Jason Schreier said here, a lot of people are understandably focused on the Saudi Arabia and Kushner part of this, but the far bigger immediate impact will come from the new private EA being on the hook for $20 billion in debt. Now that they're a private company, they have to recoup that themselves. They have to be able to pay that off themselves. That could mean mass layoffs, more aggressive monetization, which will make games worse, as if FIFA or, you know, what is it, EA Sports FC and similar sports titles and many of EA's releases weren't monetized enough already. They might be significantly more aggressive on that front, and other big cost-cutting measures.
Yeah, that probably will happen, but it will likely be done in an attempt to make things more palatable for buyers. Slosh has a beast guy just for lurking. I mean, you know, it's fair. James and Kay apparently have one too for networking. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. It's not like you use it actively though, you know.
That will ultimately negatively impact much of the future of EA. That's the fear, and those fears, I think, are well warranted. And then tying into the cost-cutting measures is this article from the Financial Times, whose headline reads, Video games maker Electronic Arts strikes $55 billion deal to go private. While this article is paywalled, there are news outlets who have picked up on certain aspects of what this article learned that are important to know in this grand scheme of cost-cutting measures so they can pay off that $20 billion debt to JP Morgan and Chase. So right here we have...
Well, you know, you're not a pedophile, Slosh, so...
Insider Gaming, whose headline reads, New EA owners hoping AI will cut costs and boost profits. It's...
Okay, that's just funny.
No, what the heck, I'll laugh anyway.
It's claimed by the Financial Times. It reads right here that, according to that article, the ownership group is betting on AI being able to significantly cut CEA's operating costs. AI...
I don't go just to not draw unwanted attention or end up like Kangman Lee minus the ability to network like him. Yeah, fair enough. I just stopped using... I don't even use Twitter really anymore, so... I just post when I'm going live, basically. Thankfully not. Yeah.
AI will be used as a way to boost EA's profits in the coming years and to manage a large debt load on a company that historically carried limited net debt. And then further amplifying why all this is ultimately bad.
I don't really see what they're going to use AI for other than to like generate assets or whatever for their games. I don't think it's really going to save them any money. Yeah, exactly. I use X, but very lightly as well. Yep.
For EA, its franchises, and the developers, and the artists, and folks who actually want to make games for the art of making games and wanting to deliver a good product, is the perception that, you know, as the New York Times heard right here, gaming companies have tried to adapt to changing player attitudes and appetites. Console games, those made for the PlayStation and Xbox, as well as desktop computer titles, have largely been in decline. This is a perspective and claim that is plain and simply false. Some of the biggest successes these last few years have been from non-live services, from single-player experiences. I mean, if you look at some of the most successful...
Yeah, and that's true. I think live service... Yeah, they love live services because they think they're going to make money, but most live services, I think, end up failing. I assume you mean Kangman Lee, was at a college with politically arrested people running the campus. It sounded like, yeah. I hadn't heard about that because I don't follow him, but Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. The company you work for is paused enough and HR is in charge, so you'd be out. Plus, you're in a right-to-work state, so double F. That's like... I think that's almost every state. And in terms of HR being in charge, that's like every large company.
Titles on Steam, which highlight some of the most successful titles, period. Looking at the all-time peaks here and putting them in that order, you'll find that, you know, second place is Black Myth Wukong.
Okay, I don't think Black Myth Wukong is a, I don't think that's the best argument, because, to my knowledge, it's a Chinese game. And say what you want about the Chinese, but they're very patriotic. So, it is very likely that Wukong, you know, might have been a fine game, but it was heavily, heavily supported by the Chinese. So that's not the best argument, though I do agree with them in general.
Power World is up there, Monster Hunter Wilds. You've got, you know, the likes of Cyberpunk 2077 and Elden Ring and Hogwarts Legacy, and Baldur's Gate 3 has...
Yeah, Hogwarts Legacy is a good example, though, because that is actually a single-player game, you know, and it did really well. Yeah, then there's Baldur's Gate 3. Well, our manager recently left, he may have been a guard, maybe. Huh. Interesting. Yong speaking against his own nation. I think he's Korean, Slosh. I don't think he's Chinese.
Among the most played and the most highly successful financial commercial products, and then most recently even indie titles like Hollow Knight Silksong have garnered tremendous acclaim, and on top of that have sold incredibly well and have done numbers that a lot of those AAA publishers who pursue live services in the name of profit would be jealous of. But the general belief is that the direction to go is live services and free-to-play, and this is something that EA has subscribed to for a very long time. You know, they've made claims that single-player games are dying when in fact they're thriving more than ever. The New York Times states right here that instead gamers have flocked to free-to-play games like Fortnite, and many play from smartphones and other mobile devices. Not to say that there isn't a huge audience there, not to say that there aren't huge financial successes on that front.
But I mean, think about it. Let me ask it this way. How is this different from what EA has already been doing for like the last 5 years? They've just been spewing out, you know, live services because Fortnite is so popular, and they keep failing, except for like what? I think Apex Legends kept going, but most of them have failed. Like, remember Anthem? So how is this any different than EA's continuing business plan?
But all of that often involves gameplay systems that force you to spend money on, you know, gambling elements, microtransactions, and gacha and loot boxes that kind of inspire recurrent spending in order for you to have like an ideal experience, because those games are purposely designed in such a way that you have to spend a lot of money recurrently in order to be able to get the rewards that you want at a fun, consistent, not insufferable pace. And that's because it isn't very regulated. Companies just get away with the most extreme versions of those elements, and that's what these, you know, many of these AAA game companies or publishers want to exploit. They want a piece of that pie because of the monetization potential, not because those pave the road to great gameplay experiences. This continues. Others have embraced casual mobile games which do not take the same amount of time and money to develop as those made by major studios like Electronic Arts. And so the perspective is they want more money for less effort, for less work, for less expenditure. And then it says right here, analysts believe that the Saudi plan is to make some of Electronic Arts' most popular titles widely available and possibly free to play on platforms, which could include mobile devices and streaming television apps. And yeah, those analysts are probably right. Entities like Saudi Arabia come into play here. And
again, none of this is really anything new. This is just the standard modern Electronic Arts playbook.
Making such a major purchase of EA, it is ultimately about just spreading their influence. It is about acquisition of money and power. But the thing is, getting in bed with Saudi Arabia is not something that is viewed in a positive light due to, as I mentioned previously, some of the major ways in which Saudi Arabia does not respect just basic human rights. So right here we have the Human Rights Watch website that talks about Saudi Arabia, and you can see right here just all of the various reports that highlight that Saudi Arabia, the leaders and organizations like the PIF, the abuses that they've partaken in, the censorship that they've partaken in, and the way they've essentially just wiped out dissenters is pretty ruthless and just morally, not even questionable, just morally reprehensible. It reads right here, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has consolidated political and economic power, including as chairman of Saudi Arabia's public investment fund.
You know, I don't remember this kind of outcry over Saudi Arabia when they were involved with Embracer. It's interesting that it's only just now that it's EA.
On the PIF, a sovereign wealth fund that has facilitated and benefited from rights abuses. PIF investments in high-profile sports and entertainment events, domestically and internationally, are used to whitewash the country's abysmal human rights record. Migrant workers, including on PIF-funded projects, face widespread abuses under the kafala sponsorship system. Saudi Arabian...
I think that is what I was talking about earlier, where they often steal passports, and they basically enslave people by stealing their passports.
Authorities harshly repress any dissent, including by handing down long sentences or the death penalty after unfair trials or charges related to peaceful online expression. And
yeah, hearing this turd talk about these issues when he sides with people who literally silenced half the US a few years ago. Yeah, no, there are a lot of people like that, unfortunately. Yeah, you know, free speech, he doesn't... Yeah, I don't think he really cares about freedom of speech. Just freedom of his own speech, basically. His own side's speech.
And that's just scratching the surface. And then the likes of Jared Kushner and his organization being in league with the elite, and their goals not being aligned with delivering the best consumer experience with gaming, but just aligning...
I don't like Jared Kushner either, but you just know that this guy... that Yong Ya is not upset about this because Jared Kushner is, you know, an Israeli shill. He's upset about this because he has pure TDS. Like, you know that's what it is. It's just TDS. He doesn't have, like, a legitimate reason to dislike Kushner.
Lining their pockets with, you know, more money, because for these kinds of folks, you know, enough money does not exist. There's all the money. That's what they want. You know, you got a concoction here that just is basically the worst case scenario I could have imagined for an EA acquisition. One potential upside is that because EA doesn't have to appease to shareholders anymore due to the fact that they're going private, maybe they have more autonomy over the way they do things, but that autonomy ultimately comes down to who is at the head of EA. And sure, Andrew Wilson might be the CEO, but he's ultimately a puppet of the...
I mean, EA will probably be left to its own devices to some degree. But like I said, they're going to strip EA for parts, so whatever EA does is going to have to be done with whatever's left after anything of use is sold off.
Investors who acquire this corporation, this company, that now belongs to them, and they can dictate however they want, they can influence however they want, and Saudi Arabia can essentially go in, and their ideals can be infused in EA releases and products. And the elites and the likes of, you know, Jared Kushner's organization, Affinity Partners, and the like of Silver Lake, all of them will ultimately influence the direction of Electronic Arts and the kinds of products they release and the kind of content that those products contain. I just don't foresee this being a partnership that paves the road to, and I don't foresee this being a partnership that paves the road to the most creatively empowering kind of situations and the most creatively empowering products. And the thing about Saudi Arabia and the PIF in particular is that over the last few years, they've gone and either invested in or acquired tons of other video game related companies. You know, they have a stake in Capcom and Embracer Group and NCSoft and Nexon and Nintendo and SNK Corporation and Take-Two Interactive. And they've acquired the likes of Hero Esports and Niantic and Scopely and Steer Studios. And then now with EA, it is all jointly owned between the PIF and...
Okay, but how are these stakes any different than, say, BlackRock or Vanguard or State Street? How is that any different than those shady investors?
And these other organizations. That is a tremendous amount of influence and power to give one entity over corporations that represent a huge portion of an entire medium, the interactive medium that is.
Or Tencent, for that matter, actually. How is that any different from Tencent, who own, like, what? A huge chunk of Epic Games? Curiously, he's silent about all of those.
Video games, the kind of power that they'll have to influence how these video games are made, the things that they'll allow and not allow, and how their goals are ultimately about self-service, how their goals are ultimately about, you know, delivering the messages that they want to send, and their involvement restricting certain kinds of content, and their involvement ultimately being about maximum monetization and not maximum fun, means that, you know,
Tencent is his people, though. Well, like I said, he's Korean, so technically no. At least I think he's Korean, but technically no. But because yeah, Tencent is Chinese.
Nobody wins here except the moneymakers. Stephen Totillo here spoke to various folks within EA who've expressed concerns as well. I wrote about the EA deal and spoke to some current EA workers to get their takes. We have seen quotes such as, "I'm nervous." Layoffs usually follow those types of acquisitions. We certainly saw that with the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard, where...
Yeah, there probably will be layoffs in all likelihood because they, you know, again, they want to make money, right? And they probably are realizing that they have too many people there who don't do anything. Of course, if you really want to accomplish something, you should be firing HR and middle management, but something tells me that's not who's going to get laid off.
Where layoffs did follow, or, you know, the Bungie acquisition from Sony, layoffs did follow. That is very much a common trend, but with EA in particular being $20 billion in debt, the pressure to cut costs is significant, and so layoffs are pretty much guaranteed. Layer that on top of reports that EA wants to rely more on AI to be able to cut costs and to be able to pay off their debt. These companies are losing their soul, their creative soul, more and more, and just the human element more and more.
This is EA. They don't have a creative soul.
And then, you know, there are people who are afraid that EA will be restricted in the kinds of representation that they can put in their games due to the fact that, you know, when you've got Saudi Arabia involved, they're very strict about the kinds of things they do censor, and they censor a lot of stuff. Again, Saudi Arabia...
No! No!
Are you?
No! No!
Are you joking?
No!
Are you joking me?
Not the women and the LGBTQ employees. Oh no, whatever will we do without them? Oh no.
Oh no! What happened? Oh no! How terrible! That's just awful! How terrible! Oh no!
Yeah, so this is why I wanted to use the Yongya clip. There might even be something better out there that's even more like, you know, even more woke lunatic. But yeah. Yeah, I figured we could laugh at this. I figured we could laugh at all this together. Cuz it's so you know, out of all this, we can at least enjoy the woke people freaking out. Even though, in all likelihood, they probably the wokeness will not really go anywhere, but there will probably be layoffs, not because of wokeness, but just because of costs. But oh man, does it feel good? Does it feel good to just laugh at these people? They lost their creative soul decades ago. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was saying. EA doesn't have a creative soul anymore. Ram. Yeah. Yep. I love these clips so much. Good. Well, I'm glad you love them, Wingus, because I love putting them together. I always think of random clips, and yeah, then I like putting them in. Right here's one I think you guys will enjoy.
Shit.
I haven't found a reason to use that one yet, but I've been waiting to use it. Are you going to cover how EA wants to replace their employees with AI too, though? I think I think that was covered, Sergey. I think that was mentioned really quick. I don't know if there's like a more deep dive into it. But I probably won't go too into that. At least right now. But I did say that I don't think it's going to work out the way they think it will. There is no... Like, we've seen this with tons of companies so far. There are companies saying, oh, we're gonna replace all our employees with AI, and then they actually try it, and it turns out to be a complete dumpster fire. Or what they actually did is lay off all their employees and replace them with H-1Bs and outsourcing. So, yeah, I don't think AI is really going to do what they all think it does. Yes, Margot Robbie. Yeah, we all gotta love Margot Robbie. I got one more too.
Got it? Okay. Now fuck off.
Again, I don't really have a good use for that one, but I thought it was funny. Sorry, I totally missed it. All right, no worries. Yeah, Microsoft is one of them. Yep. Yeah, Microsoft has been abusing the H-1Bs massively. Yeah, Amazon, again, has been... I think they're the biggest abuser of H-1Bs at this point. But, yeah. All right, let's wrap up with everyone's favorite singer.
Breaking the law.
About the kinds of things they do censor, and they censor a lot of stuff. Again, Saudi Arabia rules with an iron fist. Dissenters get shut down, journalists get assassinated, and you've got situations where like human rights are straight up just abused, and they just don't care about that stuff. They take power at all costs, and that's the kind of entity that EA has aligned itself with.
Gee, who else likes to take power at all costs? Certainly not any particular political group.
With EA and its board of directors. So yeah, EA was already under very awful management. EA does have talented folks, the developers who genuinely care about the creative side of things, who are restricted by the chains that management put on them. But now with this kind of acquisition where the power has gone to some of the worst people imaginable, some of the worst organizations that could possibly helm a video game company, yeah, none of this paints a positive light for EA and its future. But I suppose only time will tell.
And that part I agree with. It is highly unlikely that anything positive will come out of this. I'm glad that less woke stuff, that may mean more microtransactions, I don't know. Well, I think, yeah, it sounds like you missed a big part of this, Sergey. What I was saying is I don't think that it's going to be significantly less woke. I don't think the wokeness is going away necessarily. But you might get more microtransactions. I think more likely they're just going to strip the company for parts. Yeah, Wingus, you're thinking about who else could do that, right? Okay, BRB. Okay, gotcha.
We'll tell how all this will play out, but the general sentiment out there right now is this is a big old yikes. This
woke Twitter speak detected.
EA ship, it's being steered by the worst people who could steer this. And just even from a moral standpoint, the associations that EA is engaging in by letting itself be acquired by some of these awful entities, some of these awful people and organizations, it paints an extremely negative light and extremely poor optics for a company that already had some of the worst optics in the games industry, due to specifically the way management, leadership and the suits and the executives operate. This is the same company that said that the microtransactions infested Battlefront 2 was about giving people a sense of pride and accomplishment.
Yeah, the surprise mechanics that are quite fun. Yeah, I remember that.
The same folks who said that loot boxes aren't gambling, they're Kinder eggs, and they're fun, and there's nothing morally wrong with them. Quite fun and quite ethical is how they put it. So ethics is not something that EA has ever really been concerned with, and it especially shows with this acquisition, the fact that they were...
So I guess we can at least agree on that.
...let be acquired by the likes of the Saudi Arabian PIF and Jared Kushner and all these entities it's all ultimately very self-serving. But that's one man's take. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on EA in the comments below. What do you think the future holds with this acquisition? What do you think will change? What do you think will remain the same? And what do you think about EA going private and it being acquired by the entities that have been listed? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.
Young out. One more time.
We're breaking the law.
Young out.
So Slosh says they'll probably limit future regional releases like they always have, but the inner workings probably won't change much. Yep. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think they're going to change that much in terms of EA's general internal operations. I think, yeah, they might do... And yeah, Disney does the same thing with their releases. They didn't put out the Lightyear movie overseas in certain regions, and the Skywalker movie with the lesbian kiss was cut out entirely. Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. That is pretty much what I'm saying, is that they will probably just do the same thing they've been doing. You know, maybe a bit more regional censorship. But yeah, I don't see this in any way fixing EA or making it all that significantly less woke. Yeah, Saudis will do the same thing overseas. Yep, the money just changed hands. Yep, yeah, it's just different people, and like I said, I think they're just gonna strip the company for IPs. Like he'd care if they handed him a fat check. Well, to be fair, Fractured, if I were handed a fat check, I would probably sell out too. But you know, that's how you know that's how you know I'm honest, is that I hate everything and nobody's paying me. So, you know, if someone wants to pay me to sell out, I am available. I am available for purchase. Okay, so yeah, that's my thoughts on EA. I don't think we'll get into the whole private equity rabbit hole today. At some point I want to cover that. There is like a whole rabbit hole about private equity doing this kind of thing where they do leverage buyouts on distressed assets, basically use debt to buy a company that is not doing great, saddle said company with debt, strip the company for parts, and then let it die. And then there's also a second part to this where they're selling off all that debt to, you know, pension funds and retirement funds, and people don't really know about that. At some point I want to dig into that rabbit hole, but I don't think I want to do that today. But at the very least, that is what's going on with EA and what I think is going to happen. I think it's just going to be the typical private equity route. I don't think we're going to see any significant fixes of EA or any significant reduction in wokeness. I think that the people who you're seeing going about, oh, this is EA is good, you know, this is going to be like epic based wokeness going away, EA is getting better, people who are doing that. I think they're either just grifting or they're being way too optimistic. And I won't name names because I don't want to do that. But I think there are a lot of people who are trying to turn this into something it's not. I also don't think it's going to like be, you know, I also don't think that the woke people screaming about it are right either. I don't think that they're going to kill their woke garbage for the most part. Ask Bill Burr what his bank account is looking like now. Yeah. Well, I don't... In Bill Burr's case, didn't he just, like, tone everything down because he got married? Let's see. Yeah, I perhaps would too, but I try to have some scruples. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I do have my, my moral scruples. I could guess the usual suspects, yeah. I mean, there are a lot of people... There are even people out there that I really do like that are saying this. I just don't think that they're paying enough attention, because I think what happens is a lot of the people who talk about, you know, they talk about like gaming media and stuff. I think they're more heavily focused in the gaming space itself, and they don't really focus necessarily. Yep, they're not like crazy like me and watch Alex Jones and get into all the globalist conspiracy theories and all that. So I think they're probably not the kind of people who are really going to be paying attention, and so if they don't know what, you know, what you might learn about private equity from other stuff, they might think that this actually is going to be some epic base, you know, end of wokeness kind of thing. So I don't necessarily blame them, but I do think that a lot of people are missing a lot of key information. Unabated. Wingus, I'm not... It looks like you're correcting something, but I'm not sure what you're correcting, Wingus. Reactionary content from people I follow closely. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are definitely grifters out there too, but I think there are a lot of people who are just... Yeah. I think it skipped my comment. Yeah. So a lot of times, Wingus, your comment... YouTube shadow bans comments. So if you... Yeah, your comment simply didn't go through. So what'll happen is YouTube will actually... It'll look to you like your comment went through, but then your comment never actually went through. YouTube does that for some reason. So if you like refresh the chat, or if you close and reopen the chat, usually you'll see whether or not your comment went through. No worries. All right. Maybe it's the word slop. Could be. YouTube censorship AI is so weird. It gets triggered by the most random things. Yeah, he did. He tilted more left. Bill Burr, I assume, since the last year, especially with the election. But he took a big Saudi check for that comedy super show coming up. I bet his BLM wife is happy to see that. Nice. It's what some have called hope grifting. They get too overly optimistic on these things when you need to be realistic. And I know you don't want to be le black build, but shilling false hope is shitty. Oh, dude, I am way past black build, man. But yeah, a lot of them do shill false hope for this stuff. It's the same kind of thing when they're like, oh, my heckin' base Japan is gonna fix gaming, and then you see Nintendo putting out all their overpriced nonsense. And then it's like, no, how could my heckin' base Nintendo do this? I thought Nintendo was gonna save gaming, you know? It's the same kind of thing. Hope grifting. Yeah, that's a good term. You've been seeing... I assume you're referring to the chat getting censored, Slosh. You've been seeing that more lately, especially in the Melee chat. Yeah, I see it all the time. And it's not just the Melee chat, but I think I tend to chat more in the Melee chat. So, that's where I tend to see it most. Void build. That's a new one. I haven't heard that term. Alright. We live in a corporatized society now. Everything we loved as a kid now exists to make money. Yeah, and the sad part is, and this is why I said gatekeeping is important. You gotta gatekeep. Yeah, you were talking about the chat. This is part of why gatekeeping is important, with what I was talking about earlier during the Stan Lee bit. This is why you need to gatekeep. It's not just about woke people. You also need to gatekeep normies from hobbies. Because when normies come in, that is when corporations realize that there's big money to be made. And that's when everything turns into normie slop. And everything just turns into complete consumerist garbage. And there's no love or care put into anything anymore.